Welcome to People in Profit, your essential business briefing. I'm Kate Moody. Coming up, volatility is back on the global oil markets as prices gyrate. We find out what's next for the industry and consumers. America's gun lobby applauds Donald Trump's decision to withdraw from an international treaty. We look at the numbers of the powerful firearms industry. And we take a journey to the Italian Alps, where a small train line that had been given up as obsolete is making money and protecting the environment. Volatility is the word of the moment on oil markets. Producers, led by the OPEC cartel and Russia, have been capping their output in an effort to boost prices and earn more money. But the U.S., which is producing more and more of its own shale oil and gas, is anxious for supply to remain fluid and prices low. Sanctions and political uncertainty in Iran, Libya, and Venezuela have contributed to the latest roller coaster moves. In April, prices of both international Brent, shown here in blue, and US WTI crude, shown in red, hit their highest levels in 6 months, topping $74.70 and $66.31 per barrel, respectively. The series of price swings has thrust the industry into sharp focus. Well, for more, we can cross to Christopher Haynes, an oil analyst at Energy Aspects in London. Thanks for joining us on People in Profit. Help us understand, why are oil prices so especially vulnerable to geopolitical instability?
It's clearly to do with the threat to potential supply. So I think, if we look at the key areas of geopolitical instability at the moment, you've got Iran, you've got Venezuela, perhaps a little bit in Libya. Combined, these countries are going to be producing close to 5-6 million barrels a day. So that's a good 6% of global production. So any impact on that, or at least the threat of impact on that, is going to be bad for oil prices.
Oil prices jumped after the U.S. said it was going to be cracking down on the exports from Iran, getting rid of those exemptions for countries that had continued to buy oil from there. How do you expect to see Iran's oil industry respond to these changes?
So I think the end of the sanction waivers is going to make it a lot more difficult for anyone to buy oil from Iran. You're still going to see Iran trying to push out as much oil as it can through channels that are not linked to US dollars, not linked to the US financial systems, to places that have kind of a limited threat under the US sanctions. From what we're seeing, exports have been about 1.2 to 1.4 million barrels a day in the last few months. That's going to reduce significantly, in our view, to about maybe 600,000 barrels a day. So you're going to be taking a lot of oil out of the market.
Help us understand Venezuela's place in the global market here. It has huge oil reserves, but relatively limited production.
That's correct. So it's actually rated as the largest oil reserves in the world. So I think you've got close to 300 million barrels. A lot of that, billion. A lot of that is actually in heavier oil. So kind of the oil sands or the Orinoco Belt area of Venezuela. So actually an incredibly large part of that reserve is very difficult to extract. The production at the moment is under a lot of pressure. This is because of a lot of different reasons, financial reasons, that Venezuela, or PDVSA in particular, has been challenged with both getting the kind of personnel in order to undertake the correct operations on the oil fields, but also to pay companies in order to kind of drill and get that production going. So there's been a lot of struggle, and this has been going on for years. I think ever since the Chavez government was in there, you had a lot of, what's called brain drain. So a lot of your highest skilled workers left the country, went to places like Colombia, Ecuador, the US even. And that resulted in this kind of massive downward decline in production that we've seen over the last few years.
How important is the role of OPEC these days? Is it losing any of its leverage as US production increases?
I think OPEC's as relevant as it always has been. It's sitting on a huge amount of resource. It's got some of the largest reserves in the world. It still produces more than 30% of global production. I think the only difference is that perhaps they have less leverage with the US, because the US itself used to import, almost 8-9 million barrels a day. That's come down substantially to, maybe we're closer to 4 million barrels a day at the moment. A lot of that is because they've got more domestic production, or they can take more production from Canada. So there is a slight change in the relationship, but that doesn't mean OPEC is less important, because they're still supplying the growth markets of the world. So your Chinas, your Indias, all that kind of extra Asian demand. And that's still growing at quite a clip.
Now, this volatility on oil markets is starting to trickle down to consumers. Here in France, for example, fuel prices have hit their highest since 2013. Is this a trend that consumers should be bracing for?
I think it's certainly a worry. On the supply side, we're just about to be hit by reduced exports from Iran, troubles in Venezuela. There's the whole Russia debacle that could cause impacts to supply. Nigeria's lower. There's a lot of supply that's coming offline. So ultimately, when you don't have enough oil to meet the demand, it's got to be the price that makes the difference. So higher prices, perhaps further down the line, are going to mean we'll have some kind of a demand-side reaction.
Christopher Haynes of Energy Aspects, thanks so much for your insight.
Thank you.
Next, Donald Trump has withdrawn America's participation in the UN Arms Trade Treaty, a symbolic gesture that nevertheless underscores the weight of the American gun industry. The pact was signed by Barack Obama in 2013, but had never been ratified by U.S. lawmakers. Its goal was to regulate the multi-billion-dollar global arms trade and keep weapons from being sold to human rights abusers. But speaking to the powerful lobbying group, the National Rifle Association, Trump suggested the treaty could threaten America's Second Amendment, the right to bear arms.
We will never surrender American sovereignty to anyone. We will never allow foreign bureaucrats to trample on your Second Amendment freedom. And that is why my administration will never ratify the UN Arms Trade Treaty.
Well, Brian Quinn's been taking a look at the state of America's arms industry. Brian?
Well, Kate, America is by far the world's leading weapons exporter. In the past 5 years, the U.S. share of the global arms market has risen to 36%. Russia is a distant second at 21%. France, Germany, and China round out the top 5. Civilian weapons are a very different market from jets and bombs, but one that's perhaps no less impressive. America has some 393 million privately owned guns. That's 120 for every 100 citizens, the highest concentration in the world. It's a $40 billion industry that's often driven by a fear of stricter laws. Gun sales tend to spike after mass shootings, and the run-up to the 2016 election saw record highs as well. Since the victory of gun-friendly Donald Trump, though, sales are in decline, down over 6% for 2018 in what the industry calls the Trump slump. The National Rifle Association has led the fight against gun control laws, and it's a big money operation. Times appear to be getting tougher, though. Tax filings show its 2017 income down $55 million from the previous year, amid allegations of corruption and financial mismanagement. In 2017, it spent about $27 million on political lobbying. U.S. companies are taking sides in the gun control debate, too. After a 2018 mass shooting at a Florida high school, Delta and United Airlines ended discount programs for NRA members, as did MetLife Insurance. Dick's Sporting Goods has moved away from selling guns, and investment groups like BlackRock have pushed for gun safety measures. Well, Dick's has since seen falling revenues amid pressure from firearms customers and suppliers, demonstrating once again the controversial nature of gun ownership in the U.S.
Brian, thanks so much for that update. Next, it was closed for 15 years, but a tiny regional train line in the Italian Alps has gotten a new lease on life. Now, not only is it paying off the local government's initial investment, it's helping to reduce air pollution. Tatiana Nasser reports.
This train line was shut down in 1991 in order to cut losses. 15 years later, it reopened with brand new trains. Now, at least 6,000 passengers take this route on a daily basis through this rural area of the Italian Alps. For the locals, this provides a practical alternative to the use of their motor vehicles.
This train is great for all commuters, students and workers, especially to avoid rush hour traffic around the bigger cities.
The region of Tyrol took a big financial risk to get back on track. Local officials invested over 135 million euros to build a new railway and install modern equipment, including grade crossings. In the Murano station, a control room monitors all the trains in real time. Totaling over 60 kilometers of train tracks, plans to electrify and expand the network are in the works.
The electrification of the line will allow passengers to travel from Mali to Austria, passing through Bolzano, the Brenner Pass, all the way to Innsbruck.
Werner Goller is a train conductor and the chief engineer. He believes modernization helped cut costs as he does the job of 2 people, which in turn contributed to the profitability of the line. The local community is positive there will be a large return on investment. 30 million passengers have used this network since its relaunch. Also, within the last 10 years, CO2 emissions have decreased because there is less traffic on the roads. A breath of fresh air in this mountainous region of Italy.
Well, that's all for now, but you can find the best of our coverage on our Facebook page, France 24 Business, or you can tweet me with your questions at Kate A. Moody. Until next time, thanks for watching.